Is maths really the language of the universe? Well, it's a pretty interesting question. But first, I'd like to ask an entirely different one, and that is, what is blue?
Well, we know that blue is what we use to describe things like the sky and the ocean. But what does it actually mean for something to be blue? Well, according to Oodle's definition, blue is of a colour intermediate between teal and violet, as if the sky or sea on a sunny day. But you see, the problem with that definition is that it would require one to first define green and violet. Therein lies the problem. The problem is that blue and, well, all colours simply come from a man-made construct. It's based on a system from a man-made construct, that is to say. And yet the usage of this system perfectly describes the things we see in our daily lives, but there's nothing inherent in the universe about the colour blue. We use it as a means to communicate the physical differences between, say, the sky and the petals of a rose, and yet it's near enough impossible to describe to someone who has never seen it before in a way such that they could understand it. It just is what it is, and we will casually use it because of how efficient it is to do so. The reason as to why it can't be described so easily, it ain't comes back to the fact that it does not inherently exist within the universe. The concept of blue, like all others, is simply a man-made construct used to describe a physical phenomenon. And whilst this may seem like a bit of an irrelevant point to the original question, actually, the reason why I posed it is because I believe that colours and maths are one and the same. That is that maths is also a man-made construct to describe a physical phenomenon. Say, if you wanted to describe the number 2, well, it's kind of difficult to define what 2 is without any sort of visual representation. 2-ness is not something that inherently is in the universe, it's just something that we sort of made up. And it's why, much like the colour blue, neither can really be described with words alone. For the complex number 3 plus 2i, we would say that 3 is the real part and 2 is the imaginary part, where I is the square root of -1, and yet neither is any more real or imaginary than the other. The only difference is that real numbers can be visually represented, but imaginary numbers aren't. The truth is that imaginary numbers are a bit of a misnomer because we see them come up just in real life almost as much as real numbers do. One of the most important equations in all of physics is the Schrödinger equation. This governs the behaviour of quantum particles, and yet, lo and behold, featured within this equation is none other than the imaginary unit I. When we can see it come up in such a context, is it really fair to call the square root of -1 imaginary? The truth is that all the maths that governs the universe and the physics within it is made up. This maths has led us to things such as string theory, which will explain things and everything within the universe. It explains the particles, and yet it's so difficult for us to test experimentally. The maths works, but the experiments. And to me, that's sort of a problem, right? When one is able to realise that maths isn't perfect, they'll begin to understand the man-made nature of the subject, right? Gödel's incompleteness theorem says that if you have an consistent logical system, i.e. a set of axioms with no contradictions in which can do a certain amount of arithmetic, then there are statements in that system which are unprovable using just that system's axioms. What that essentially means is that not everything can be proven with maths alone, and that is actually a fact. That alone should be an indicator that maths is not the language of the universe. So, it's clear that it isn't perfect, right? But that doesn't mean it isn't beautiful. With the way that we see the golden ratio in nature, and the fact that something as simple as the rate at which a population increases over time has no Euler's number involved within it, it's difficult for us to call maths made up when we see all of these just amazing cases. But you see, the truth is that it's just a coincidence. It's designed that way. Maths has been designed by man in a way such that it's able to survive these things. It just is how it is by design. And to me, that's actually perhaps more beautiful than having it just come by nature. It's a system that we have designed that perfectly, well, near perfectly, describes everything in our universe.